All right, folks, we're at the top of the hour now, so I wanted to take a moment and thank everyone for joining us today. Some of you may be familiar with Fusion Pro, some of you may not. If you're not, it's a solution that's for VDP automation, document creation, document automation. If you're familiar with InDesign, it's a very similar product, so you can kind of use that analogy as we go into today's presentation. Really, there's a myriad of different use cases for Fusion Pro for document automation. It really doesn't have a specific industry that it sits within. Today, we've chosen to tailor the presentation to the local, state, and federal agency audience. There's a lot of really good use cases here, one of which is these organizations are distributing a lot of communications to various, let's call them end users or constituents, for lack of a better term. But there's a large amount of information they're getting out, and we can add a lot of value by streamlining that process. Joining us today and doing the bulk of the presentation is going to be John Genovese. He's been working with Fusion Pro for, I believe it's about 20 years now, so he's much more experienced in the solution than I am. And we're not going to do death by PowerPoint today. We really want to go ahead and show you the solution, show you some real world examples. Today we're actually going to be showing you an example from one of our customers, state of Tennessee. We're going to walk through one of their forms. John's going to speak to that in a little bit more detail. But for today, we're going to look at some different examples, some benefits guides, some utility billing. We are going to take a brief overview of the solution so you can see the architecture that's working behind the scenes. But I don't want to steal too much of John's thunder, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John. He'll give you a brief introduction, and then he'll take you into Fusion Pro and show you how it can add value to your state and local agencies.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. As Robert said, I've been with Fusion Pro for some 28 years now. 28, geez, Pete. For some 20 years now. I've been working with the application, in a sales capacity, but I came from a technical background, actually came from a printing background, but then a technical background. And so I tend to be a little on the technical side and enjoy that part of the presentation. So, let's jump right on in. Fusion Pro, as you'll see, is a solution that can produce a wide variety of documents. Things like statements and menus and, tags. This just so happens to be property tags from police municipality, but property tags, for example, calendars, postcards of a variety of different kinds. What you're seeing on screen there is the one that I'm going to highlight in a couple of seconds. I'll do a deep dive into that one because that was amazingly complicated and was put together by a long-time, quite excellent user of Fusion Pro. In the world of state, local, federal government, you have a variety of documents that, you might come across, right? So employee benefits booklets, between federal and state governments, local governments, they're one of the biggest employers probably on the planet. And there are a variety of documents, many of which are manual fill out, and many of which are starting to be converted into system filled out because they have all the data that belongs in these things. So why not create a template that can autofill a document, or why not make the benefits guide specific to you and your family versus just printing a generic guide, right? So much more informational. Also, we see a big movement into more download type documents, and Fusion Pro can help you there. Fusion Pro is able to produce accessible documents. So any document that it creates can be read by the screen reader, which is also a pretty huge benefit. And then, of course, states and federal health insurance plans have all kinds of associated documents. You can have booklets that are statewide in scope, or you can provide booklets that are very specific to an area as a recipient of that booklet. I prefer, of course, the one that is specific to my area, so it has less pages, more pertinent information, if you will. These are, in fact, live documents. So these are things that we have done for clients, help them really make a document very specific to its intended use. Another big one is municipal and anybody really billing type documents. We have a number of clients using this in the state and local government world that are producing not only utility bills, but tax bills and just all kinds of different bills that the state can put out. This is another big solution you might have in your environment that we can help you with. And then, as Robert said, we have this state of Tennessee motor vehicle registration. This was a time-intensive application. It's one that I'm going to be showing, outside of the slides here. I'm going to be showing a little bit more in depth. Each run of this motor vehicle registration renewal was 600,000 records plus. So it was a very large run, of course, postal sorted and so forth. And we need to take that into account. There are a lot of other attributes associated with this. So when it's filling out that information that you see on the back side, actually the front side, I guess, this information here, that's all being driven by rules and such. And as I mentioned, folks they were using FusionPro already to produce this, but they were using the desktop version. And because it was the desktop version, it was taking them quite some time to create these 600,000 records. The desktop was never intended for that. So it was literally taking days to produce this output. Okay. So the other thing is that, the batches that they were created, they were stack printed, to keep the database in order. But it was kind of hard to find a break between the stacks. And so we were able to take a look at this application, change out their FusionPro Creator, not change it out really, but we added FusionPro Producer. And we were able to make it so that instead of running a bunch of little batch jobs, they were able to run all 600,000. And instead of taking days, the entire job now runs in 3 hours. And not only that, we were able to add a separator page in between the stacks. So as you'll see, as I open this up here in a minute, there is a page with a black border around it that the person that's doing the cutting can fan through the output, and they can literally see where the stack breaks. They stick that in the cutter, pile that into a tray, take the next stack, add up, put that in the tray right behind it. So it's really made their life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple different things here. First off, let's take a look at the template. As I mentioned, this template is quite complicated. Amazingly, they have a number of rules inside of here that do all kinds of different things. Some of these rules are what we would call a form rule. So for example, converting something to all uppercase, although in the next version, we would be able to do away with these. We've made that even easier inside of the editor. We're putting that capability in the editor is what I'm trying to say there. But they have, rules for different graphics that might be coming in. Just a whole host of barcodes and such that they need to produce inside of this document. Now, so this is the template, the front and back of the template. And as you can see here, FusionPro, is an Acrobat plugin. The toolbar is over here. Everything that needs to happen happens here. And we can compose. Now, when we compose, I can compose at the desktop. Now, if I were to try to compose 600,000 records at the desktop on the machine I have, it would eat up all the resources and crash. So you would have to break that down into much, much smaller chunks. Around 5,000 records or so would be ideal. And even then, it would take a long time. All right. Desktop product. So let's take a server version of FusionPro. And instead of breaking this thing up into small batches, let's send the entire thing. Now, to do that, It's the same exact template. I simply check this checkbox, which says, run this job on the producer, which is somewhere out on your network. Typically it could be a VM, et cetera, but it's in your environment. And then we're going to break this thing up into however many records we want to put into a file. So instead of having one file of 600,000 records, they wanted one file of around 80,000 records. Okay. So we broke it up doing that. We also set up that we would be using an imposition, and we would also be using a slip sheet between the stacks. Now, the imposition that we have set up is right here. So you can see that this would be column 1. This is the front. So this is column 1. And it turned out that 198 worked well for their chunk size, which was that 80,000 roughly. So you take the chunk size, divide it by 9, that kind of gives you your count, right? So 198 is what we came up with for this particular run. And as you can see, we're doing 9 up, fronts and backs. And we have this thing set to stack printing. So, it does everything that it needs to do in the order it needs to do it in, right? Which is, the whole idea here is keep the database in order because it's been postal sorted. Now, we combine all that. FusionPro producer goes about its job. Our team was able to make some tweaks in the application that really has FusionPro swinging. All those tweaks will actually be incorporated in our version 14, which is due out imminently here. But that created the output file. So this is the very first page of the output file. So, I have this separator page at the beginning of the stack. So the first page would be the beginning of the stack, right? So that's page 1. Page 2 is a blank page. It's a 2-sided document. So that's the 2-sided. Page 3 starts with the cards. All right. So here is record 1 right there. And then page 4 would be the back side of record 1. Page 5 starts record 2, and etc. Right in that column. Now, if I take this and we expand out and we take a look at the thumbnails here, what you'll notice is, as I skip down here, so right around 400, so there it is right there, right here is the beginning of the next stack. All right, so these 2 pages. And that will repeat all the way throughout the output file. So as a cutter operator, you simply need to fan down, to this page, grab everything before it, put it in the cutter, put that into a tray. Then fan down to the next break, which will be a few clicks for me. Obviously, it'll be a couple inches of paper for them. But, scan down to that next one, find that black border. There it is. And then everything here is the next stack. And as I said, this is stacking in chunks, right? So every stack is unto itself. So pages 1 through, whatever, and then pages whatever through the next. That's how that works. So everything goes into the tray, of course, broke up by the tray breaks as well. So, again, this is a great application where we were able to help a lot, take things down from days of composition work, and even manage to trim some time out of the cutting process because, they weren't doing the separator sheets before. Okay, now let's jump back into our presentation here. Okay, so now a little bit about FusionPro. As you saw, FusionPro is a plugin to Acrobat, right? And everything starts with FusionPro Creator. It's where you do the layout. It's where you create the rules. It's where you bring in the data. It's where you tell FusionPro what needs to happen on that page, no matter what it is, right? It's all set up in here. So, you can picture somebody at their desktop working in design. There's a helper plugin in design, but ultimately in Acrobat, doing the design work. And if your volume needs are relatively low, 5,000 records or less, I like to say, then just use FusionPro Creator. Create the template, assign the database, and then output the file. You're doing great. Now, if in fact you have a lot more records than that, and you don't have or don't want that bottleneck of time and composition, then we make a product that's called FusionPro Producer. That was what you saw when I checked that checkbox, right? So you're still working in FusionPro Creator. You still combine the database to the template, but now when you compose, you send it to a server that is taking the composition effort away from the desktop. And then, of course, it's creating the output. Now, some folks need automation. We have customers that have 10,000 new data files coming at a particular template every single day. And that would not be something you would want to do in FusionPro Creator at the desktop level. We make a product that is called FusionPro Server Lite, which introduces hot folders. So you're still using FusionPro Creator to design that template, but once the template's designed, proofed, and such, you're going to put that into a template repository. Now, the template repository then has things that we call conditions and tasks. So you can picture a condition would be if a data file comes in that has PC data in its name, then use the postcard template that we created. So that would be the condition. The task would be create PDF VT output, put it at this UNC path out on the network, use this particular imposition, things like that. As soon as that file shows up 10,000 times a day, it automatically kicks off. It automatically creates output that gets put into the output folder, as you can see on screen there. And if that output folder just so happens to be the front end to a printing press, then that's going to pick that job up and with it. Now we have other customers that have more complicated needs. Let's say that you want a copy of the document that we just showed. So you might be able to go online, and if there's a repository there, great. But with FusionPro Server, you can actually have a API workflow. So John Genovese, I log in, I say I want my data for the vehicle registration, and it produces it on the fly through an API call. Classic web to print systems use this exact system for doing proofing and final production. But when you combine it into a situation like I'm explaining where there's maybe a website involved, now that document that you get can be accessible, all right? Or you can have APIs calling to produce documents that get emailed out that are accessible. So a lot of different use cases for the API, but it's basically same idea here, right? You started off in Creator, create that PDF template, you put the template into the repository, and now instead of calling for a composition using the watch folder, you're calling for the composition using an API call out of some other system, whatever that system might be. Now, one such system is Ricoh's own Ricoh Process Director, or RPD, if you've ever heard it called that. This is a system that allows you to automate tasks. So, a data file comes in, it gets sent out to postal sorting, it gets brought back, gets deduped, whatever, your process might be next. And then one part of it's going to be calling for a FusionPro composition, which is built into the product. Then that's the API system we just talked about, right? So API does its job, creates output, it gets brought back in. Maybe this particular batch is for emailing, so it goes through some other process. Maybe this particular batch is for printing, it goes through that process. I mean, you can see up here, you can set up all kinds of different workflows for your documents using this product. Okay, as it turns out, we are at the end of our presentation. This was a pretty short one as webinars go, but I am happy to answer questions if anybody would like.
Hey folks, we do have everybody muted today, so if you do have any questions for John or myself, please feel free to go ahead and enter those into the chat or the Q&A portion, and we're happy to address those. But as John said, we'd love to have these one-on-one conversations with you so we can walk through your specific business processes and share some more examples just relevant to a day in the life of your operations. John, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the chat here. I haven't seen any questions yet.
Okay. Well, if that is the case, I'm going to give everybody some time back in their day. And I really, really sincerely appreciate you joining me for nearly a half hour. Thank you. And again, as Robert said, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out. I am always ready and willing to do personalized demonstrations. You know, you can try out the software if you would like. We can help. We have teams of people, by the way, that are able to build templates. If you don't have somebody that can build templates, we have people that can. We're doing a tax document out in Colorado right this very minute. Our team is building that for the folks there. And there's a number of different projects going on that we can apply people and skills.
Perfect. Thanks, John, for walking us through everything today. One final comment I'll have is we will be getting a copy of this recording out to everyone. Give us a couple days. We're going to go ahead and clean it up a little bit for you, but it's something that you can use as a resource, and please feel free to share it with your team members that may not have been able to join us today. But as John said, we'd like to thank everybody for their time, and we're going to go ahead and get you back to your day a few minutes early. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a great rest of the week.